So Alexander Zverev has won Rome for the second time in his career, but we're going to talk about why it was a bit of a weird and wacky tournament in general. Maybe it's a bit of a sign of the future and what's to come. I'll talk about that. But it really leads the question for Roland Garros coming up. Like, who is a favorite? Is anyone a favorite? Or is it just totally wide open? So we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about Zverev's win, Djokovic getting injured, all the other weird things that were going on with Rome 2024. Here's the slice. Welcome to the show. Thanks for being here. If you're new here, why don't you smash the subscribe button and boost your tennis game? Because it's scientifically proven that if you subscribe to the slice, you become a better tennis player. It's a very weird phenomenon. But thanks for your support. Alexander Zverev wins his sixth Masters, second Rome title, and kind of just came through this draw being under the radar a little bit. Everyone, anyone who's been paying attention to the ATP Tour in 2024 knows that he's been playing well, and he gets it done versus Nicolas Jarry in the final. And looking at the stats of the final, it was pretty good performance from Zverev. He went 6-4, 7-5 over Nicolas Jarry, who had beaten a lot of great players on the way there. Some crazy stats from today, though. Zverev had 6 aces. His first serve percentage was 80% first serves in. That's scary. 95% first serve points won. So he only lost 2 points on the first serve. 70% of his second serves won. So he didn't face a break point, whereas Jarry faced 9 break points, was broken only twice. Kind of classic Zverev style there. Has a lot of opportunities, doesn't capitalize on them all. But the scoreline being 6-4, 7-5 almost makes the score probably look a little closer than it was. Zverev definitely seemed to be the better player today and won fairly comfortably in the final there. But you can see how much it means to him falling on his knees when he won, because it's his first big title since he basically snapped his ankle at Roland Garros 2022, if you remember that. And it means a lot to him, obviously. Apparently, so he's going back to the 4th seed or the 4th rank on the ATP ranks or rankings. And he wins the tournament. Why do I call it a weird and wacky 2024 Rome? Well, there was a few things in it. Rome is always one of those tournaments. It's like a week and a bit before Roland Garros starts. So, some of the top players have always skipped it to rest up before the tournament, especially if they have little nagging injuries. They will miss the tournament in order to be completely fresh for Roland Garros. So we saw Alcaraz do that this year, skipped Rome to prepare for Roland Garros to get rid of his arm issue. We saw Sinner not show up either, and this hip issue now there's a pretty big chance he's going to miss Roland Garros, is what I'm seeing, because he doesn't want his hip issue to become chronic. So that already starts, the two hottest, youngest players on the tour not being at the event makes it weird. And then then you got Nadal being in Rome and it being his last Rome. He did this big farewell walk. You can see it on the Slice Instagram page, saying goodbye to the fans in Rome, basically. So you're like, is he retiring? It looks like it's his last it's like an unofficial farewell tour, as far as I can tell. So that made it a bit strange as well. He also lost in the second round to Hubert Hurkacz, who now has like an incredible record of just, beating Nadal and Federer in their last matches at certain tournaments. Like he just beat Nadal in probably his last match at Rome, and he beat Federer at his last match in general, but also at Wimbledon. So Hubert Hurkacz, the silent assassin, nicest guy on tour. He just ends people's careers at tournaments. Pretty amazing. That was another weird thing. And obviously the Djokovic situation where he got knocked in the head by a water bottle. Doink. I said it a million times in the last video. That was strange. And then also this week we had Dominic Thiem releasing a video saying that he's basically retiring, and that made me sad during the week. So in my opinion, in my view, it was a weird tournament. And then the other part about this tournament that was different is that this is what the semifinals and final looked like of the Masters 1000. We had the Chilean sensations Tabilo and Jarry making the semifinals, playing Zverev and Tommy Paul. 2 great matches. Jarry takes out Tommy Paul in 3 sets. Zverev takes out Tabilo in 3 sets. But definitely that is not the semifinals type of caliber of player or rank of player that we're used to seeing at the Masters. I'm sure you know what I mean. So that's, in general, we can take a little bigger look at the draw here, but in general, that's what made this tournament a bit different for me. But I do think it's a sign of the future. We've talked about this for a while, and I've talked about this many times on this show, that the future, the next 10 years, is not going to look like the last 10, where we're always seeing the top 3 or 4 guys being at the ends of almost every tournament, especially at the majors. And I'm talking about Nadal, Federer, and Djokovic. For like 20 years, basically, you would expect to see at least one of them in the final. And the stats of them being in the finals of majors or masters, I'm sure, are just ridiculous. I haven't looked up any, don't have them off the top of my head. But the odds of one of them being in the final of a masters or a major would probably be above 90%. And that is just, I do not think that's going to be the case going forward. I do think Alcaraz and Sinner, barring injury, and Holger Rune will be up there, will be the best players of the next 10 years. But I do think a lot more tournaments are going to look like Rome did this year, where you see those guys get injured or lose early because there's going to be more players who can do more damage and have more confidence. And there's going to be less of a 1 or 2 or 3 players being in every final or semifinal of every tournament. So I do think this tournament was a bit of a preview into that. Now, mind you, Zverev has been around for a long time. He literally won Rome in 2017, taking out Djokovic. And that was a match that I covered when the slice was in its first year, within its first 6 months of starting. And Zverev was like, this is a guy who's going to be challenging the big 3 for the years to come. I guess, he was, but he never broke through and really won a major, or didn't win a major. And, now he's 27. So he's got 5, 6, 7 years left in his like prime career. But, I wouldn't count on him being in the final of every major or masters going forward. So it's just going to be a more open, more democratized top of the ATP Tour, I think. Right now, you look at the top 30 players, and a lot of them are names that are not household names at all, but a lot like Jarry, like Tabilo. But if you are those guys, you have belief that you can get to the late stages of tournaments, where I don't think people outside like the top 10 had any belief that they could do that for the last like 15 or 20 years. So my point is, I think more players are going to be making runs like this in tournaments going forward, and the best players like Sinner and Alcaraz, Zverev, Tsitsipas they're not going to be holding the top place and holding the place in every final going forward. That's all I think. So how does this affect Roland Garros going into it? It's wide open, man. It is totally wide open. Djokovic going into Roland Garros having not made a final in 2024. It's the only time that's happened other than 2018 when he was injured. So since like 2006. So Djokovic is going in with the least preparation and the least form he's ever gone into Roland Garros with, basically. And Alcaraz's arm is a question mark. Sinner's hip is a serious question mark. Zverev just won here in Rome, so he could, he's almost looking like the favorite going into Roland Garros to avenge what he feels he could have done in 2022 if he hadn't have snapped his ankle 3 hours into the match where they were still only barely done 2 sets against Nadal. So who's going in as a favorite? Holger Rune, he's going to feel like he has a good chance. Casper Ruud, he's going to feel like he has a good chance with Nadal and Djokovic, the 2 other guys he's played in the finals of Roland Garros the last times he's done it, not really in their best forms. Stefano Tsitsipas, over 5 sets, he's made the final of Roland Garros before. Nicolas Jarry, playing amazing tennis. Tabilo, he could be dangerous. There's like 20, 30 guys who not could win the tournament, but can be dangerous. I would say there's like at least 10 who could win the tournament, which is totally different than years before. French Open in the last few years has been more open than others, I think. But really, really, there's a lot of players who could potentially win the tournament this year, which is not normal. So when we do the French Open draw preview and breakdown, it's going to be wild. We're going to have to get deep into it, but that's just a preliminary look at it. Rome didn't give us any answers. It gave us more questions than answers. That's why I think it's a weird tournament. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave them down below on this tournament. Zverev gets the win, gets a big win for him going into Roland Garros. He might be the form player going into the tournament. You never know. Let me know your thoughts below. That's the slice. You got it. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for being here. We will see you next time